Okay, we're going to be talking about iMessage apps. I don't know many faces here, so that's good. But we're also going to be talking about messaging as a whole. I'm sure you all use Messenger clients. I'd at least hope so. But who am I? This is kind of the style I'll be using, and I'll get into that. That's a good question. And I'm also using stickers because stickers are cool now. So I'm an iOS engineer. I'm a designer, as you can tell with the bubbles. And I'm currently building a messaging company called Dormillo, like Stefan had mentioned. Mohsen over there is building it with me with a laser pointer. But that's who I am. I'm also in my last semester here at RIT in the CS program. So, thank you. So first I'll be going to be talking about messaging, then the design aspects of iMessage apps and like what you're actually building, and then somewhat of how to build it. As well as like a little tad bit into where I think Apple's going with messaging as well as the industry as a whole. So like I said, I'll be following this question and answer style. I have like 100 slides to get through, so we'll see if I can do this in 20 minutes. But they're mostly pictures, so it'll be easy. And stickers, more stickers. So messaging. Why is messaging important? Well, it's a good question, right? So the space right now is really saturated. I'd bet that of these, what are they, like 8 apps or something, you probably have used 5 of them. Show of hands, like how many people think they've used 5 of these apps? Probably everyone. Messaging is the biggest industry right now as far as software goes because humans are inherently communication beings, right? We communicate with each other, we're social. And messaging is kind of the next iteration of communication. So let's see iOS downloads. It doesn't represent Android, obviously, but downloads as far as how popular messaging is. Most of these are games, but most of the big ones up here, if you could see that, are all social or messaging apps. So like I said, messaging is huge. So of the messaging apps, I'm going to be focusing on like 2 or 3 of them. And those will represent the industry as a whole. So I'm sure you recognize this one, Facebook's Messenger. Some of you will recognize WhatsApp. Now Facebook owns WhatsApp, but WhatsApp's more popular in other regions of the world, mostly Latin countries and some parts of Europe. And then there's this other app, this beast called WeChat, which this is a little old. I think WeChat might actually be the biggest chat app right now. And then there's some other ones. Line is popular in Japan. Snapchat's popular in the US. Kakao is popular in India. Kik, Canada, and some of the US. And then you have Viber for kind of Latin America and Canadian countries. There's one of them. So let's talk about Messenger first, right? This was in 2015, the end of 2015. Messenger had reached 800 million people, and this is what it could do. So a Messenger app is communication, right? But it's far past communication. So these are all the things you can do with Messenger. And this concept's called messaging as a platform, and I'll get more into that. But this was 2015. A few months later, I want to say it was 3 months later, Messenger hit 1 billion people. So that's 1 out of 7 people on Earth are messaging pretty much every day, every week on Messenger. So this is one of the largest technological problems that a company has ever solved, because that's how big and how at scale messaging is these days. These are huge apps that we're talking about. And like I said, messaging as a platform. So these, some of you might have used these, especially if you know people in Asian countries. So the first one here is QQ. The second one is WeChat. Like I said, these aren't very popular in the US, but these are huge in Asia, and they're really deep in the culture. QQ, here's the growth. So Facebook Messenger reached 800 million people by the end of 2015. This is 2009. QQ almost hit 1 billion people, specifically 1 billion Chinese people. So of the people in China, nearly all of them are using messengers. And the rest of the world will see that in the coming years. So pretty much if you're in computer science, you'll be working somewhere in the messaging space within the next 2 decades, because that's how popular messaging will become. Here's WeChat. It's kind of the new brother of QQ. They're owned by the same company, Tencent. The company name doesn't matter, but they're owned by the same company. So like I had said, WeChat is very popular in China. This is pretty representative. The thing that you need to notice is that of people using messengers and people using technology in China. 64% of them are using WeChat every day. So this represents all the different subcultures of China. Elderly people who traditionally aren't using messaging, as well as younger, super young people, children, and all ages of the working class. They're all using messengers at about the same rate. And this is growing every single day. So what is this, all of this, what does this mean? So China's population right now is around 1.4 billion people. That's growing, obviously. India's population is 1.2 billion people. And then America, despite our technological influence, we're only about 25% of these other countries, probably even less. So although America is viewed as the technological hub, right, the technology that we're developing is being used by these countries. And that's why technologies like WeChat have exploded, because they've become ingrained in the culture. So WeChat's winning, not in American markets, but it is winning around the globe, and I'll get into why. So, like I had said, WeChat's a part of the Chinese culture. This is hard for us to imagine. There are some people like Stefan over here who message 100 people a day. There are other people who send a few emails a day. There's some people who send 10 messages a day. But most people are sending messages. But that's not just what WeChat's about. WeChat's about interacting throughout your entire day on one platform. So it's pretty typical in China specifically to send your boss a sticker. So you'll be at work, you'll get stickers, you'll get gifts from your boss. All of these interactions that are pretty strange to the American culture, but in China they're huge. And like I said, that follows you through your personal life, through your work life, your school life. You're using stickers everywhere, and you're also using apps. So the reason apps are popular, and I'll get into that, is messaging as a platform, right? So if you view an operating system today, Mac OS, or you view Windows, right, they allow you to access other applications. If you take a step back and you apply these to a messaging app, they're very much competing with operating systems. So through conversation, through interacting socially, you're accessing tons of other applications that would allow you to buy a movie ticket, see somewhere on a map, anything you could do with an operating system. WeChat invented this paradigm where you can do that through chat with your friends socially, and that's really taking off in China. In the next 10 years in the US, it'll be incredibly popular here. But we're just seeing the beginning phase of that, and China is a good representation for where the rest of the world will go. So like I said, there are all these messaging apps, right? It's a saturated space. They're all chasing this money here. That money is 7 billion active users, so every human on Earth using a messaging app as an operating system, as a way to power their daily life, using applications in a lot of different ways, far past just communication. So that's what everyone's chasing right now. The operating systems like Apple, Google, Microsoft, they're scared of it. That's why they're investing heavily into competing in the messaging space, and specifically in China, because if they can meet the demands of the Chinese people, they can meet the demands of any people using messaging around the globe. So let's just look at this again. This is global population rates, 2015 to 2100, I guess that's how you say that, the year 2100. So the big population growths, the rest of the world's kind of staying central. Asia is going to have huge growth, and then Africa will have even larger growth. So if you look at this map here, right, this little region over here is where all the users of messaging will be, because that's where people will be, right? So who will build the WeChat that wins to all these new people? There's very few people that can do this, very few companies. There's 3 people I chose, right? Zuckerberg, Facebook. I don't even know his name, I can't say it, but he is from Tencent, the person who developed WeChat, who invented these concepts. And then there's Apple. Apple could represent other hardware manufacturers, but they're the first one to jump into this messaging space. So let's focus on Apple, just because that's what this talk's about, kind of. So Apple's net income by region, right? US, but these are growing every day. China, Japan is growing as far as users, so Apple wants to focus on them. That's why they're getting into messaging. Tim Cook's kind of a celebrity. So this is iMessage apps. With iOS 10, Apple introduced them, and I'll show you this video.
Yep.
So in this commercial, which was kind of the debut main commercial for iOS 10, Apple's new mobile operating system, nearly every interaction had to do with messaging, had to do with social, communicating with your friends or someone else using the new iMessage functionality. So Apple's betting their entire operating system on this, and I think the best way to see it is how they advertise themselves. So like I said, this is iMessage apps. On the right here, we have stickers. On the left is a traditional app. Stickers are subsets of apps, but they're a little different, so I'll get into that. Let's talk about how the launch went with iMessage apps, right? Overwhelmingly, GIFs took off. GIFs are huge. And what iMessage apps allow you to do is access them quicker. And then there's also interesting social-related things, right? When you're going to buy a movie ticket, when you're going out to lunch with someone, and then a game, those are things you do socially. So if you can add those apps into something that's social, a social environment, communicating with your friends, it makes it easier. And the data doesn't lie. It's showing that's where the growth is right now. So with stickers, games are incredibly popular. So iMessage apps include stickers, like I said. Stickers can be added on to apps, kind of like an extension. Right? So if you have Clash of Clans or any game, you can add a sticker pack to that. And the people that use that app can then use the stickers with their friends in conversation. So stickers are huge in the game market right now, and as well as entertainment. These are the top sticker downloads, all games pretty much. So then iMessage sticker pack pricing. There's actually a ton of money in stickers. In the Asian market, stickers are a huge part of life. People pay a lot of money for them. Just like live stream video, which we kind of view differently in the United States, but in Asia, these things are very valuable. So overwhelmingly, people pay $1, even more than free. So they'll pay you money to download good stickers that they can use with their friends, something they can show off. So let's talk about how these work. Design, like I said, there's kind of two types of apps here. Stickers and then traditional apps. So stickers are essentially a pre-built app from Apple. All you have to do is create a pack, add images to it, and then you can release that on the App Store without a container application. You can just release your sticker pack. So the way this works, if you're not an iOS user, this is kind of like I want to say like an operating system, right? You can switch between different applications you have open. On the bottom here, you can swipe. This is in place of where the keyboard would be if you're messaging someone. You can swipe and you can see this app here. You can swipe to a sticker pack. They're all in this one container. And then you can also, I guess I don't have a picture. You could tap right here, this thing, open up a view and open other apps. The most recent ones will show up first, where you can swipe through here. So it's really easy to access. So Apple's seeing a lot of growth for users who traditionally don't use kind of social apps like this. They're just so easy to access that anyone could do it. So let's talk about stickers first. So stickers, the way it works, you can peel a sticker into a message. So I can hold my finger here, right? Drag that on top of this message. The other user, even if they haven't downloaded a sticker pack, they will see that sticker. They don't have to have it downloaded. It's completely social and shareable across the entire platform. And then you can also just click one, click send. This is a concept that Apple kind of has driven into their iMessage product here. The user always needs to hit send. There's no way for a bot to send a message on behalf of a user, but I would bet that's where the future is going. So with stickers, right, there's small, medium, and large. Medium's the most popular size because you can it's very easy to see. So then that's stickers, pretty simple. You just drag images on your messages, send them. Apps. So apps are a little different, right? In place of the kind of sticker view like we saw, there's this, essentially it's a sandbox, an open canvas. You can do anything you want. But this is an area a user can interact with, and then you can create a message, and that user has to hit send to send that message, right? But also the user can open it up once they've sent it. So I'll get into some examples that show you a better idea of how this works. But also they're interactive, right? So you can have an open, or let's give the example of a poll, right? I can send a poll to a group of friends in a group chat, in a group conversation. They can each answer the poll, like, where do you want to go to lunch? I give them 4 responses. They each send one back. The message moves through the conversation until the last person answers it. So they're kind of interactive. Everyone gets to interact with them. And then you see the final result. And like I said, this is the container view. So here's an example. This is from Apple. An example of what an iMessage app can be. This is a custom sticker app. So like I said, sticker apps are subsets of iMessage apps. You can kind of customize the experience and then create stickers differently, but you could also send them as this like integration kind of thing in the iMessage platform. And then the user who receives it can open that up, customize, they can essentially send a response back, and then you get it on the other side here. You could interact with that, and you can interact together. So it's kind of a way to allow users to interact without giving an application too much control. So the biggest part, right, there is an accessible means to download these. There's an app store built right into your keyboard. Really simple to download an app, and they work for people who haven't downloaded the app. So if you send something to your friend, it'll give them a download link right there. This is very important because this is how social apps will grow, right? You can have an iMessage app for finding movie tickets with your friends. Each can pay for the ticket, and then it'll send a final ticket to everyone at the end. You send the request for your friend to buy a ticket. It tells them to download the app right there. Apps like this will usually be free, so the user just clicks download, instantly downloads on their phone, then they can interact with it. So developers who are building these apps will see huge growth through this social graph utilization. So Airbnb, I think, has done one of the best. It's a GIF. GIF's not playing. So anyways, you're in the Airbnb app. You want to share it to your friend, right? You go to the share sheet. You click iMessage, right? You can share it. It'll look like that when your friend gets it. But you could also send it right from your keyboard here with the Airbnb app built into iMessage. And then your friend would see it on the other side. They can open it up like this, all within iMessage. Right? They can open it up. They can interact with it. They can send you a like. You would see that feedback. And Airbnb has a way that you can plan a trip with your friends all through iMessage, which is pretty cool, actually. So as far as development, the fun stuff for most of you guys, how to make money in a college, build an iMessage app. So these use MessageKit. MessageKit's a framework from Apple that they unveiled in June, this past June, before iOS 10. So what do you need to make iMessage apps? One, you need Xcode. It's software for Mac. It's kind of the interface builder as well as the IDE, so you can build apps for iOS products. Like I said, it only supports Mac. And then you also need a $99 developer license if you want to release to the App Store. Otherwise, it's free. So how do you add stickers to my app? It's really easy. This is saying that I have a current app, a game, I want to add stickers to it. You add a target. So this is Xcode here. Go to File, New Target. Right? You can create a sticker pack extension. You could even create an iMessage extension to add it right to your app. So what's a target? That's important to know. It's kind of an iOS development thing. Every project has at least one target. So a target could be Mac OS X, it could be iOS, and then also extensions. So more importantly, this is where you see them. This is where you see your targets in your if you click up here to your project name in Xcode, you can see your targets. You would add a target for iMessage, right? So before I get into what is an extension, if you wanted to build an app just for iMessage, you wouldn't have an iOS target. You would just have the iMessage app extension target. So then you can release just the iMessage app, and you don't even need to release a standalone app that shows up on the home screen. So what's an extension? Extension's kind of the basis of how, this is the only thing that matters, Apple gets into it. Extension's kind of the base of how you can interact with your app throughout the iOS operating system. Apple introduced this 2 years ago. They're far behind Android. Android's had this forever. But Apple's tried to do it in a manner that allows the user to have control. So an app can't take over your phone, essentially. So extensions allow you to do a lot of things. Photo editing. I'm sure you've opened the photo app if you use an iPhone. And Instagram or one of those apps that you have downloaded will let you edit your photo in place without leaving the photo app. Sharing extensions. And then, of course, now these iMessage extensions. So like I said, if you have a container app, your iOS app that you built, you can release an iMessage app, an extension with it, as well as some sharing extensions or whatever you want. So this is part of how iOS architecture works. So how do you share data? So like Airbnb, right? They had the database of cached images so that you could see all the results for a search. How do you share that between your main app and your extension? Because they're kind of two sandboxed items. Apple has a way to do this. It's called a shared container. So all of your apps look at one container that's on the operating system rather than two separate ones. So there's no way an app could like steal your information. How do you create a standalone app? An iMessage app, that is. Let's do the stickers first. Right. This is an example I did. Pusheen, the friendly Facebook sticker app. This is what it would look like. This is the goal. Right, and I could just send Pusheen to my friends. So how do you do that? You go into Xcode, File, New Project. You can select Sticker Pack Application. You could even do an iMessage application. I'll get into that. So it's really easy. It's pretty much drag and drop as long as you have the software installed. All you do is drag your images in. These are the icons here, represented up there. And then these are all the list of stickers. So like I said, the icons, stickers. So here's an example of one sticker. One thing that most people don't think about when they're developing for iOS or iMessage, Apple gives you this little target here where you can say the name of it and accessibility. That's really important for blind users, right? Now that everything's becoming visual within an operating system, if I send a sticker to someone that is visually impaired, they have no idea what I'm talking about, and their operating system will send this confusing thing vocally to them, and it makes no sense. So you want to make your apps accessible in every way that you can. So apps, how do we build them? You do an iMessage application instead of a sticker app. You name it. This is important, this organization identifier as well as a team. Like I said, you have to pay $99 to create this team essentially, and then Xcode will have you log in with the information. And then you have to set an identifier, so that's just my name. You can do that, you can do a company name, whatever. In the language, the examples I'll show you are in Swift. So once you create the app, it just drops you in here with code, lots of code. So essentially what this is, there's the message app view controller, MS message app view controller, that's for messages kit. That essentially controls the conversation flow, the user interface, everything that the user would see with the iMessage application. So that's kind of the highest level of control with the software. It's the principal view controller. That's how it's called in the iOS ecosystem. So with this example here, if you could see that, this would be that view controller, but it's also expanding. So this view controller has to be pretty dynamic. It has to be able to resize for the different presentation styles that your users would see. Primarily, they'll see it in the keyboard, but if someone views it, they need to be able to view it in full screen as well. So you would use a session. You actually don't need to use a session. What an MS session is, essentially, if you're doing the Airbnb example where you're planning a trip with a friend, you need to have all of the identifiers for those friends so you can kind of display the interaction going back and forth. An MS session allows you to track that. you probably don't need to know any of this, but it allows you to track who's sending what message and gives them identifiers essentially. So then the conversation is what you will need to use if you are building a iMessage app. This is what allows you to send your message essentially. So right, the selected message, that's what the user has tapped onto. So when you are presenting the full screen view, the overall, this thing here, this will give you a conversation, right? That conversation will say what is selected, and then you can see what message is selected. So you have a reference to a conversation object, and then that object has this information, and it's given to you at the right point when it's invoked in your software. So you get the selected message, the participant, so who I am. iMessage generates a unique identifier, and then who your friends are. It changes every interaction, so you use a session to keep track of that. Apple does this so you can't use analytics to track where messages are ending up, because that could be a pretty big security vulnerability. You can stalk people essentially through iMessage by just sending them a message, which is pretty cool. So this is a conversation. You can essentially insert a message into the conversation. The user has to hit send. You can't do that like a bot would. You can't do that quite yet. And these are how you would do that with Swift. So then it would show up here. The user would have to hit this button to send the message. If you've used these, I'm sure you've seen it. So a message is pretty much what the user sees, right? This is the information that's represented by the operating system. Right? You initialize it with a session to keep track of the message history. But with a message, essentially what you do here, you want to make it accessible, obviously. You can specify an error. So if the image doesn't download properly or something with the operating system, you can tell your users what's going wrong. A layout. So this allows you to select different styles. Apple has just one right now, but eventually they'll have more of how you can lay out and how it'll look in the actual message flow. The sender, this is given to you, session, and then summary and URL are kind of important. URL can be like a image URL, right? You can send a little card to your users, or when you share something, your users would see a card with text. That's the summary. The URL could be the image or a website, whatever you're sharing. So just these two things allow you to control what your user sees. And then you have total control once that blows up into a full screen app. All of this is on Apple's developer site. And there's like a lot of videos. So if you're confused at all, their documentation is really good this year actually for this feature because they want it to be really popular, especially in Asian markets. They actually localized it to Chinese dialects because they want this to be big in China, their next big market. But it's also great in English, and they have videos in both languages, I believe. So if you're confused about how any of that worked, they have like 2-hour-long videos that'll help you figure it out, as well as documentation, and then a lot of example apps. So go here. I'll post these slides, but this is how you do that. So the future, where do I think things will go? Obviously, messaging as a platform is huge, right? I think you can all agree. Apple does. That's why they're betting on it. But there's also a lot of potential in something called conversational UI, which is part of messaging as a platform. Now, conversational UI is interacting just via text, so without user interaction. What I mean by that is if I send a message to Uber and say, I want a ride, right? You can get a response from Uber, car's on the way, right? Just doing things through communication. That's where we see the industry going. So this designer here, he doesn't actually work for Apple, though he should, came up with how this might look in iOS 11. So I would bet this time next year you'll see something like this. Right? This is Lyft, open table. You can interact with applications rather than just people in traditional conversation. So rather than sharing something to a person, you can interact directly with software via text. So this is how it would work for Lyft. Right? You could interact, request a ride. Your software can talk to you. That's something that we haven't seen quite yet. Companies like Facebook are kind of paving the way. A lot of them had failed, but when a company like Apple adopts them, that's how it will become mainstream. So this is how the traditional keyboard would look. and it would all integrate into one cohesive experience. So software via text. And that was put together by this guy, who should be working at Apple if he's not already. So questions. I said a lot of things about a lot of crazy stuff. I'm sure you guys have questions. Anyone? Yes.
Can I make sticker packs on not Mac OS?
That's a good question. So sticker packs, essentially, it's just a kind of a folder with names of images and then some descriptions in a certain folder format. You can make that folder on any computer if you understand how the format works. It's pretty simple. But you would need a Mac and the Xcode software to compile that into an application. So no, but you can do it locally, and then if you have a friend who has a Mac, you can ask them to help you. So you could kind of do half the work. Any other questions? You had a question?
I actually didn't.
Oh. I hit 30 minutes exactly, by the way. So all 100 slides and 114 slides in 30 minutes. Just saying, I'm kind of good at this.
So could you like create a fake iMessage account and use that as a bot?
No. So Apple, they have banned iMessage sessions, so no, you can't do it.
Okay, because I was wondering, because like maybe you could have like an iMac chilling in your basement, running.
You could experiment with that.
Yeah, next hack night, workshop night.
It's pretty difficult, but yeah.
Yeah.
So if none of you are aware, iMessage is actually a really secure protocol. So SMS, which this guy knows a lot about because he worked at Twilio, SMS is very unsecure. It's like an awful 1970s protocol. iMessage is built on like crazy encryption. So when you send a message to someone, it pings Apple, says what computers do they have. So I probably have like 4 computers on my iMessage account. When Oren's over here sends me a message, it would encrypt that with 4 different encryption keys and send that to all my devices separately. So it's a really sophisticated protocol, and it's very secure. Yes, Oren's?
Wait, so if it sends it to 4 devices separately, then like when you get a notification on one of the devices, how do the other devices know that you've already read that message?
Through the magic of iCloud. So the push notification system is different than the actual iMessage system.
Okay.
So the iMessage system is sending 4 different encrypted data files, essentially messages, and then it's also asking iCloud to send a push notification to all your devices to download that information. So it's 2 separate things. Yes.
So do apps like WeChat also have the same level of encryption as iMessage right now?
I don't know about WeChat. WeChat's technology is actually pretty far behind, despite being really progressive in what they're doing as far as messaging as a platform. Facebook just, last week adopted encryption. So they haven't adopted encryption for all of their users. WhatsApp has now, by default, encryption. So all these companies are really moving towards complete security. That's one of the things they need to do before interacting with your software over message becomes popular, right? Because if you're doing your banking via text messages, that could be really insecure. But all of them are moving in that direction for sure, including Dormillo, the company I work for. Any other questions? Yes.
How can I get, as a codeRIT person, get a job at Dormillo?
Well, Stefan, you can go to dormillo.com/careers. I have a careers page. If you like messaging, I'm clearly passionate about messaging. If anyone else likes messaging, feel free to apply. Or you can find me on all of the social networks, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere. Just friend me. Well, thanks for letting me talk. Yes?
As far as the user interface goes, what sort of limitations do we have as a developer?
So the nice part is, there's kind of one limitation. The limitation is the in-flow messages all look the same. That's why you specify like an image or a link, and Apple determines what that looks like. But once the user taps on that, the inline message, and it blows up to the full screen, you have complete control. So you could even have 3D, you can have a game view, anything you could do in a traditional app, you can do there. So you have a lot of flexibility, which is pretty cool.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.